Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bibliotheca Alexandrina. Almost a year ago, my colleagues at the Alexandria and Mediterranean Research Center had a dream. What would it be like if we were able to invite back to the Library of Alexandria the people behind its unique and capturing design? An idea that was well received and highly supported by our distinguished director, Professor Ahmed Zaid. For us, we still remember them as young, aspiring architects of Snohetta, but today they come back as one of the leading architectural firms of the world. These young, ambitious architects started a journey that will not only change their lives forever, but will also change our lives as well as the lives of so many generations to come. Today, they will tell us a story that has never been told before, a story of a building that has become much more than a building. It's the story of the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, revival of a legend by Snohetta. But before we start our celebration, I would like to thank my colleagues at AlexMed, Engineer Mohammed Al-Awad. This gathering was his idea, actually. My colleague Sabrina and Professor Ahmed Khalil. Also a great thank you to all BA staff who have worked relentlessly to bring this event into life. It is indeed very difficult task to even try to thank all the people who have contributed to the creation of the Library of Alexandria. If I start doing so, the list can go on forever, actually. All I can say is thank you. We will always be in debt to you. I'm pleased also to have and welcome among the crowds today distinguished men and women who have played a vital role in the establishment of our beloved library. It's Engineer Ihab Al-Habbak, Engineer Tariq Yassin, Engineer Tariq Hilmi, Engineer Huda Al-Miqati, Engineer Fajr Al-Gizrawi, Engineer Khalid Nofal. Please join me in a round of applause to them. Please stand. Please stand. Now we are going to show a very short movie under the title Take a Tour Around the New Library of Alexandria, and you are going to see how the library have become and how the library have thrived since its establishment in 2002. And now I'm pleased to invite to the stage His Excellency Professor Ahmed Zaid, Director of the Library of Alexandria, and I want to thank him very much for the support of this whole event, the support of the idea when it first started and we talked about it. He was #1 supporter of the idea, and I thank him for his support for the library, for the academic research sector. Thank you very much.
I have to thank you, Marwa, for all this effort that created this event, and thanks to the team of Snohista that they came again to this place to revive the legend of Bibliotheca Alexandrina. I have to start my speech. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and privilege to welcome you all to the Library of Alexandria. It is also a pleasure to welcome and thank Her Excellency Ambassador Hilda Klibestal, the Ambassador of Norway to Egypt, for cooperating with us today in this exceptional ceremony. Today, we are glad to welcome back members of the original team from one of the most successful architectural firms in the world, Snoheta, who returned to Alexandria to tell the story behind designing and building the new Library of Alexandria. Their story is worth telling, and their journey is highly admired. In 1988, the UNESCO and the Egyptian government launched an international competition to select an architectural design that would bring the great Egyptian dream, the reviving of the ancient Library of Alexandria, to life. 524 participated in this competition from around the world, but only young aspiring architects of Snoheta won the competition. We have to congratulate this office, and you are welcome. You are most welcome in Bibliotheca Alexandrina once again. For them, winning this competition for the best library design must have been a dream come true. Through their design, they were able to create a unique and symbolic building which unites the roots of Egyptian civilizations with modernism. Not only that, but it is perfectly links the past, the present, and the future. Let me here at this point quote Professor Ismail Sirajuddin, who wrote the following about this building. Professor Ismail wrote 2 books about this building. He reflects on the building. He, as a social scientist and architect, the relation between architecture and the society, he reflects in those 2 books on these marvelous buildings and writes the following about the building. Great architecture engages us to rethink the meaning of architecture. The Bibliotheca Alexandrina certainly does that. It reminds us the great architecture is more than function, more than form. It can interpret an idea. Visitors to this remarkable building will, I think, agree that it epitomizes the feeling we should have in a center of culture. It invites the spirit to the soul. It enjoins the mind to explore and listen to the better angles of our nature, to be true to ourselves, and to open to others. That is what great architecture can do. End of quote. Since it is a rebirth, since its rebirth in 16th of October 2002, as we are now celebrating 21 years of this month, the Library of Alexandria sought to recapture the spirit of scholarship and openness of ancient Library of Alexandria. It is through a revival of the legend of the ancient Library of Alexandria, the greatest scientific and cultural institution the ancient world has ever known. The Bibliotheca Alexandrina is considered a unique architectural building overlooking the historical eastern harbor of Alexandria. It is almost in the same location as the old library. The library's design was highly regarded for its exceptional architecture and construction, especially in terms of form and content. It has become a symbol and a landmark of the cosmopolitan city of Alexandria and has a positive influence on its visitors. And we had discussed with the team yesterday to have a study of the impact of the library on the community of Alexandria. And I said to them on the community of Egypt as a whole and the Arab world and even the world. And I think this kind of a study would be helpful in creating some new concepts of the library and to see the influence of the library on people as far as culture and knowledge is concerned. Created to become a center of excellence in the production and dissemination of knowledge, and to be a place of dialogue, learning, and understanding between cultures and people. The Library of Alexandria has become a cultural and academic complex which includes the main library capable of accommodating millions of books, its affiliated and its affiliated libraries. We have specialized libraries within the main library, a stimulated version of the internet, 4 museums and 17 permanent galleries, 12 academic research centers, an art center, 4 halls for temporary art exhibitions, a cultural panorama, a planetarium, an exploration hall to introduce children to science, and a conference center that can accommodate thousands of people. This is one of the main hall in this center. The building receives about 1.5 million visitors a year, offering them a very rich and diverse cultural and academic experience. And as we celebrate the revival of this legend today, it is important to acknowledge not only the highly professional team who designed the building and helped bringing it to life, but also to thank also the countless Egyptian engineers and workers who dedicated themselves to this majestic project. They worked tirelessly alongside many foreign experts day and night to make this vision a reality. So I would like to end my speech by thanking everyone who have participated in reviving this dream that we are all proud of, as well as, of course, as well as the staff members of this place of the library, in all departments of the library, for their great efforts to maintain, and we were speaking yesterday about the maintenance of the library, and I'm very happy that the team who designed this building and who supervised the work in the building, when they returned back after 20 years, they said clearly that this building is still the same. So I'm very glad, and I have to thank all the people who are working in the library for their efforts in keeping the place, in maintaining the place. And we have in this building a model for administration, a model for enthusiastic work, a model for work which is related or considering all the time the public interest of the library and the public interest and the public good of all country, not only the self-interest. So I have to thank them all, and to thank also Professor Ismail Sirajuddin because he was in the place of the director of the library for about 15 years, I think, and he bought this model, and he even bought all the models for the maintenance, for the administration, and for the quick delivery, the work that has a sort of cohesion and solidarity. So I have to thank also Professor Dr. Mustafa Al-Fiqi, who directed the library for 5 years. And I have to thank him very much because he directed the library in a very strong time, at the time of Corona, of COVID-19. So I have to thank him again, and I took the office 1 year ago, and I'm looking forward to complete what they have done in this library, and I promise that I have to work hard to keep the legacy of those two great Egyptian men to keep this legacy and to keep the library as it was and as it is, and I hope that I can succeed in this mission. I thank you very much once again. Thank you very much.
I'm also honored to welcome Her Excellency Hilda Klimsdal. She is the ambassador of the Kingdom of Norway in Egypt. We're very pleased to have you. We'd like to thank you very much for your support of our event, our idea. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with you. Please join me in welcoming her.
And dear Excellencies, ladies, gentlemen, Director, it is with pride and great pleasure that I address you today to celebrate the 20 years anniversary of this architectural masterpiece designed by Snohetta. I think it's safe to say that Bibliotheca Alexandrina is the most famous library in the world, just as it was over 2,000 years ago, when Alexandria became one of our civilization's pillars, with a legacy that continues to this day. It must have been a daunting task to create something new that paid respect to that unique history and the legacy and the legendary library of ancient times, when Alexandria was in fact the biggest city in the world, a cosmopolitan center. And also back then, the world's top architects were invited and brought in to create the legendary library of that time. The dream that many of us are talking about today, and the ambition was to gather all the world's wisdom and attract the greatest philosophers, scientists, poets, researchers. And this is just what happened. So as we celebrate the anniversary of 20 years today, we also remember the grand history it represents. So when the Egyptian government decided to revive this legend and take on this ambitious project with UNESCO, UNDP, it was a bold move. And another bold move, I think, was to select an unexperienced, let's say it, group of young architects, fresh out of school, to believe in them among the hundreds of entries from over 50 countries. The result is magnificent. It is Egypt's window to the world and the world's window to Egypt, promoting knowledge, dialogue, learning, and understanding between cultures and peoples. And in a time with increasing polarization around the world, this is something we need more than ever. I've learned that the library now hosts an annual average of 1,500 programs and lectures and conferences, over 1.5 million visitors every year, talking about themes like peace, democracy, innovative scientific, cultural, social issues with global impact, attracting famous speakers from around the world and audiences from both Egypt and globally, who are drawn to this mecca of learning. I've had the pleasure of visiting this library several times, and also enjoying Alexandria. And everything I come here to this library, I learn something new, because it's such a rich design. And I really marvel at it every time, how it combines the aesthetics and function, the use of materials and light, the wall and the art project that Jorunn was part of making, was the brain behind it, and also working together with Egyptian specialists and artisans to make this happen. It's very impressive. This was also supported through the Norwegian aid agency to reopen the old Aswan quarry. So after 7 years of construction, and from what I understand, great engineering work was required. This was completed in 2002. And this iconic project kick-started Snoheta's career, paved the way for their now global fame and impressive growth. They're world famous in Norway, I have to say. Everybody knows about Snoheta, just like everybody knows about the library in Alexandria, even though it's far away from here. What is also impressive, I think, with Snoheta is that they have stayed true to their Nordic values the whole time, emphasizing social, environmental, and economic sustainability. At the center of any library is, of course, books. I know this library has a lot of other things as well, but literature is certainly important, and in Norway we are particularly focused on literature these days, as our very own playwright, poet, and writer, Jon Fosse, was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in Literature last week. He is described as innovative, minimalistic, universal, a bit like Snoheta, I would say. His work has also been translated to Arabic, so go ahead and read him. One of his translators is here today, actually, Shireen Wahab. And I'm also thrilled that Norway will be the guest country at the Cairo International Book Fair in January. I wanted to mention that here. We have an exciting program planned with children's, young adult literature, Nordic noir, contemporary, narrative and fiction, and we look forward to strengthening the cultural cooperation between Norway and Egypt on this occasion. And we also look forward to cooperating with the library here in Alexandria to have some events here during that book fair in January. In closing, I am very happy to introduce what I believe is the world premiere of the Arabic version of the poem, It Is That Dream. And I think this is very fitting. We've been talking about reviving a dream, all of us today. The poet was written by the much-loved Norwegian poet Olav H. Hauge, who has been voted by Norwegian readers as the greatest poem in Norway of all times. So the poem has been translated by the renowned Norwegian-Syrian translator and poet Mohammed Habib, who has also translated Jon Fosse, among other well-known literary works, into Arabic. But here today is Nesma Al-Borai, who will be reading the poem to us. She is an Alexandrian actor, member of the Arab theater team, and a radio host as well. Please welcome her to the stage. Thank you. Shukran.
هذا هو الحلم. هذا هو الحلم الذي نحمله، أن معجزة ستحدث، أنه لابد أن يحدث، أن الزمن سيفتح نفسه، أن القلب سيفتح نفسه، أن الأبواب ستفتح مصاريعها، أن الجبال ستفتح نفسها، أن الينابيع ستتفجر، أن الحلم سيفتح نفسه، أننا ذات صباح سنبحر في برزخ لم نعرف بوجوده. هذا هو الحلم، هذا هو الحلم الذي يمور في الصدور، أن معجزة ستحدث، أنه لابد أن يحدث، أن الزمن سيجود بمكنوناته، أن القلب سينفتح شفيفا، أن الأبواب ستفتح مصاريعها، أن الجبال ستفتح نفسها لنا، أن الينابيع ستتفجر، أن الحلم سيمنح نفسه لنا، أننا ذات صباح سنبحر في برزخ لم نعرف بوجوده.
I say after this. Okay, I'm going to ask you to stand up so that we can have a group photo before we move on in our celebration. In the same places, we're going to stand and we're going to take a photo. هنقف في مكاننا وهناخد صورة جماعية للحدث قبل ما نستكمل فعاليات الاحتفالية. اتفضلوا. Okay. So, we've been saying a dream, a dream, a dream. And for us, really, it's a dream come true that the Snoheta team is here at the library. We're celebrating the 21st birthday of the library. And of course, I'm going to present the formal presentation of Snoheta, what they do, and I think everybody knows them. And I'm going to present them also as we felt when they first arrived yesterday at the Library of Alexandria. So let me start by the formal presentation. Snoheta is an international integrated architecture and design firm. The practice has a global presence with offices spanning from Oslo, Paris, to New York, Hong Kong, San Francisco, and so on. They started their career with the competition in 1989, winning the entry competition for the new Library of Alexandria, and then followed by the commission for the Norwegian National Opera and Ballet in Oslo, and the National September 11 Memorial Museum Pavilion at the World Trade Center in New York City, among many others. And of course, they have been awarded many international prizes, such as the Aga Khan Prize for Architecture, actually for the Library of Alexandria, the European Union Prize for Contemporary Architecture, and many other awards. I cannot go through them, but what I can say is Snoheta was named Wall Street Journal Magazine Architecture Innovator of the Year, and the practice has been named one of the world's most innovative companies by Fast Company 2 years in a row. And I think, as Ambassador Hilda said, they have stayed true to themselves, and the informal presentation of the whole team, we were very touched by your presence yesterday. We were very touched by how touched you were when you just entered the library and all the emotions that came back when you visited the library after almost 30 years being here. As I said, you have given us a building, a marvelous building, a marvelous idea. And we have always cherished this building, and we wanted this building to function as it should be. And we're very pleased that you felt that this dynamic life the library is offering, not only to Egypt, but everywhere, is happening. So we're very privileged that you are among us. And I hope that all young students among us look at these aspiring young architects at that time and look how they have gone so far and feel that they can go as well so far as they have gone. Thank you, and I would like to invite you to the stage.
What a beautiful crowd. The first thing that came to mind yesterday was gratitude. Having been entrusted with something as grand as the revival of a legend is almost incredible for a young group of architects. It's totally, as was mentioned, a dream come true. Today, we're going to do a fairly informal, collective approach to the explanation of some of the stories that has and had followed us throughout the whole period from the design competition until the final building. We have, as you can see here, so with us today, we have Craig, he's a founding partner, Robert Greenwood, Elaine Molinar, architect, Jon Sandnes, artist, and Kari Stensrud, landscape architects. And you will be hearing stories from all of us, more like a conversation-based way of talking about it, because architecture is collective work. Never be in doubt that whatever is being shaped in your physical surroundings of this world is all because many people are involved. Don't ever believe a word if it is dedicated to one person. Don't believe that's the case. It's always collective. I think we have to do it by hand, which is fine. So, as was mentioned already, at the very beginning of the establishment of Snohetta, of course, we had a very clear opinion of architecture not being for architecture's own sake. Architecture is not architecture without people. These are objects that create our societies in a sense that is dealing with all the specifics of humankind. So when we read the UN report, Our Common Future, published in 1987, headed by our former Prime Minister, Gro Harlem Brundtland at the time, we understood that the focus of this report primarily was looking at sustainability in 3 different variations. 1, social, 2, environmental, and 3, economical. And as young architects, artists, designers, at that point in time, we believed strongly that there must be a way of translating these values into design, into architecture, and into our physical surroundings. And of course, we were kind of young. You can imagine what the office looked like at the time. When these values were debated, ongoing, in this little, tiny little office under an attic in Oslo. And we called it Snohetta. And Snohetta is a mountain. It's a mountain where people can walk up and have a fantastic view. It is not the tallest mountain in Norway, but it's definitely the most beautiful. And looking at these things as a collaborative model of architecture, we believe we were setting the pace for what was the future kind of architecture to be. A model which is transdisciplinary, a model which includes different professions to make sure that every step we take in design is a sensitive step, is a relevant step, is a step that actually does create a certain atmosphere for the people who are going to use it for generations. Architecture is much longer lasting than any of its creators. And we have to know this. And that's why, based on this ideology, we meet up every second year with the people from the different offices around the world to walk this mountain, to walk, to talk, and to understand the values of our professions, to understand how we can contribute to societies in a way that makes sense for this generation, the next generation, and generations to come. And it all started with, Craig?
Well, of course, here we are today, sitting beside this building that we all know and love. You know, this was a building that everyone said could never be built. It was an impossible building, an impossible dream. Everyone told us it would never happen, but it did. And 21 years later, it's still alive and it's still growing and maturing. So we're very, very proud of that idea. We're going to start talking a bit about the earliest phases of the design work. As you know, the competition was started in 1988, but it actually had a history before that. Interestingly, there was a US president and an Egyptian president standing at the steps of the pyramids on a state visit, and they talked about the revival of this ancient library, and it started a process, and that was back in 1974. And that process led to a group of Egyptian intellectuals rallying together to revive an idea that they also thought might be impossible. And they began to work with national and international agencies within Egypt and beyond to build this idea further. And that idea led to the competition itself, as it was organized by various groups, both within and outside of Egypt. It was a phenomenon that was quite unusual, and we saw it as an unusual phenomenon as well, something we kind of had a taste for as young people. So we met together in Los Angeles, strangely enough. We all met there in a place that had the same latitude as Alexandria, and it was a city by the sea, like Alexandria. So we enjoyed the quality of light there in a way we thought would be useful in our design process. The first thing we were provided with was a brief by the International Union of Architects. It was a very well-developed brief, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. This was the first page, very simple, but behind this page was an elaborate document that inspired us. We also were inspired by the city itself, and we'll introduce later the man who authored this map of Alexandria, Ihab el-Habak from Alexandria. He was a colleague and friend in Los Angeles, and it was very hard to find maps of Alexandria at that time, and he had drawn this himself. And it allowed us to feel the shape of this harbor, the shape of the city, and he told us about the people that lived there, as he was from the city also. We also talked about the wealth of history that was part of this idea, the great life of Alexander, who built his world before a very young age, almost the same age we were at the time we designed the competition. The shape of the harbor built us into an understanding of the feeling of unification. The harbor holds Alexandria together, and we wanted the library to have that same feeling of holding the world together. We were invited to look at this amazing program developed by the International Union of Architects of the bust of Alexander the Great and all the program elements laid within his profile. And we copied this in a way. We looked at it and we felt it was very strong, and we could build this straight into the design. We didn't have to change it radically. From those shapes and forms, we also began to look at contemporary technology, which was changing at that time. The computer chips that we were starting to see in the world around us, and they were organizers of knowledge. They helped direct and manage knowledge, and we somehow were inspired by that feeling. Likewise, that unusual circular computer chip was also emoted by the great sun god Ra, this great circular form in the ancient history of Egypt. And we saw contemporary world and ancient worlds coming together. But very importantly, we were inspired by books. We had a lot of books around in those days. There wasn't any internet for us to look at. We had Constantine Cavafy, Lawrence Durrell, E.M. Forster books that we looked at. They inspired us greatly. But of course, the great Naguib Mahfouz was a huge inspiration. Alexander at Last, Alexandria, Lady of the Dew. They gave us a sensitivity for this great city that was sensual. It was about people and their lives and the character of Justine, all of these wonderful people. And then we moved from there into actual work. And here we are, believe it or not, this is Chittle and I. I'm the one in the back with all the hair, and Chittle is the very thin person in the front. At that time, we were probably as young as many of you in the audience. We were the similar age as you. We worked very, very hard. We worked with our colleagues together in a little apartment with almost no furniture, no structure to our lives, very little money. We had almost no money and no connections. We worked with a number of other colleagues who were very important from several nationalities. We were from all different parts of the world with this dream of being a part of Alexandria.
You know, when you want to revive a legend, what is the biggest danger? You can imagine in this world how many ideas there are in people's minds of what the Library of Alexandria might have been. That is a personal vision. It's distributed amongst everyone in the whole world to create a specific understanding of what the Library of Alexandria might have been. At that point, when you want to give shape to that legend again, you are in fact in danger of killing everyone's imagination of how it might have been. You can imagine how difficult for us at that point in time to develop a concept that in itself would try not to do that. And the choice of doing it contextually and modern was, of course, exactly this point. It should never, ever be confused with the old library, but it should carry the legacy of the old library. It should collect all the information in the world, and it should reflect the past, the present, and the future at the same time. So this particular section developed very early in the sketches. You can imagine this tilt of a disc that actually describes a relationship to the horizon. Now, what is the horizon but something to measure time? The sun goes up from below the horizon. It comes into zenith and falls behind the horizon again, and all of a sudden you have a full day. That's how you measure time. And in a similar way, the library is tilting around a ground plane. And the ground plane, the ground that we walk on every day, is now. The water is the horizontal, and the tilt below ground and above ground is either past or future, depending on which side of the earth you're living on. So, in my mind, this slight associative way of thinking ahead gave us a possibility in the section and in the plan to actually evolve into something that was greater than itself. I have to say, during the design process in Los Angeles, we tended to believe that this was a project at a certain level which became itself. You know, when architects become tools of whatever they're doing at a certain point in time, you can imagine what forces are embedded in the history of such a place and in the history of such a project. So we decided to simplify it slightly for us, to make sure that the elements that we were dealing with were associative enough for the public to understand, for the public to connect, and for them to understand that the object was not only a library, it was already at the beginning much more. So this simple plan, the circular plan with the cut, describes the entrance. It reflects how the conference center, where we're sitting now, was reacting to this big circle. And of course, during the competition, hand-drawn, no computers at the time, actually delivered a project in black and white with the models, with the site plan, with everything included at this level. I have to say, the Los Angeles period for us, sleeping under the drawing tables, at the time,
beans. Yeah, all we ate was beans, I think.
Yeah, we had only one video, which, you know, in a video player, it was called The Fly. We were still smoking at the time, so there was a tobacco shop just around the corner that sold Camel cigarettes, which we were smoking, and we actually seemed to be smoking so much that, in fact, we got caps where it said, "I'll walk a mile for a Camel." It was an amazing time, all of us in this apartment downtown LA.
Actually, interestingly, the nearest large street to the place where we were working, which was an apartment, was called Alexandria Street in Los Angeles. It's 1 block away.
So you can imagine, on one hand, the joy we had in doing the competition, the way it was almost not arriving in Alexandria because it was traveling through the world all the way to Australia before it actually arrived here for the competition jury. So we almost didn't make it. Like we said yesterday, one postman could have made Alexandria a different place.
And also, you can notice that the pictures on the bottom are in reverse. You see, they're backwards. We made a mistake on the first printing, and we had to fix it really quickly before we sent it out.
But then, amongst all things can happen in life, in 1989, we got invited to exactly the same place we're sitting now. And I have to say, at this particular point in time, you have to remember a young team sitting together and trying to sort of grasp what was happening, flying in from all over the world, from Mexico, flying in from the States, flying in from Norway, and being part of this.
The winner of the top is a Norwegian firm.
That's here on this stage.
And I'm very pleased to say that it's truly international. It's a collaborative group, and I'm going to ask, headed by Mr. Kito Thorson, and I'm going to ask Craig Dykers, fellow American architect who is one of the members of this team, if he would come up here, please, with Mr. Thornton, and introduce the members of this team.
We have a team of 9 people, which is put together of 6 different nations. And yes, we have our
Unbelievable, huh?
Norway, Oslo.
Nice suit.
We connected us to people here in Egypt. Iyad Habak, he worked with us. Christoph Capella from Austria. My 2 fellow Norwegians, I would like them to come up also. Øyvind Mo and Per Morten Josefsson. A fellow Norwegian, Jorunn Sandnes, artist for the graphics of the wall. Carola Moore from Germany, and she's been helping us to write this report. She's an artist. From Argentina, Adriana Bailey, I would like you to come up too.
I believe for most of us, that was the only suit we owned.
Yeah, I think you can all see it's some time ago. Yet, it kind of feels almost like yesterday. Simply because this project has been following us ever since, and only in good ways. What happened next was, of course, extremely important for this project. The fundraising appeal and the Aswan meeting. Now you have to try to imagine the preparations for presenting this project to the larger world community with only dignitaries invited from all over the world. But the most important thing for us was the fundraising appeal with Omar Sharif.
Whatever the reasons for its disappearance, the fact remains that the Egyptian government, UNESCO, and the UNDP wish to rebuild the Library of Alexandria, a lighthouse for all those who venture along the paths of knowledge. Since 1986, many milestones have been crossed. The donation of a prestigious 4-hectare site by the University of Alexandria. The commitment of the Egyptian government. The organization of the feasibility study by UNESCO and the launching of a fundraising campaign. The commitment of UNDP and the organization of an international architectural competition. The creation of the general organization of the Alexandria Library by presidential decree. The laying of the foundation stone by President Mubarak and Federico Mayor, Director General of UNESCO. The selection of the winning design. A beautiful idea is being revived.
Well, it was a process that led to many new twists and turns. There were a great many meetings that we had, especially the fundraising meeting in Aswan, which was rather special. We were meeting with heads of state from around the world, and there was a great deal of nervousness and pride at the same time, meeting all of these officials. And I recall perhaps one of the funnier stories was here we are presenting to dignitaries from around the world. And at that time, it were only glass slides, and you had to use a laser pointer, and we were talking through the images, and we looked to the audience, all the kings and queens and sheikhs and presidents, and their heads were all moving around like that, and it's because the young man who was holding the laser pointer was so nervous that it was flying around, and everybody was trying to keep track. It was a rather unusual experience, but it was a successful meeting, and we raised a great deal of money for the project from around the world, and the leaders that were there all expressed a great deal of commitment to the project. Some of these people you will recognize. It was, of course, a great deal of good fortune to meet them, but also for them to express their desire to be a part of the project, and it was an authentic desire. This was not a political feeling at all. You want to take the Aswan Declaration?
I think one of the important things that happened after this meeting in Aswan was the declaration and the way it was signed by so many people. Again, you have to realize that in order to make something like this happen, you need so many hands helping. And the wider that can be spread, the more ambassadors you can have to these type of projects, the stronger they're standing into the future. This was in 1990. And it was held at the old Cataract Hotel in Aswan, a beautiful setting. We were sailing feluccas on the Nile. I think Craig was actually having a swim, or maybe not at that time.
I went swim, yeah.
This particular setting, for us, became so important, in fact, that we dedicated ourselves for many, many years after this meeting to finalize a contract with the Ministry of Higher Education in Egypt and to be able to continue the design and, amongst others, with the help of the UNESCO and the UNDP in Paris, showing the project, bringing it forward. We had created a huge model that traveled around to try to capture people's minds and understanding, but of course, most of all, the project needed to be funded. And slowly, slowly, this library that is sitting just on the other side of this conference center was slowly, slowly being funded by the Egyptian government and by donations at the same time. At that point, just after that, we were able to sign the contract. And what happened after that? We moved to Egypt.
It was probably a decision that would cost us a lot of money and time. We picked up our lives, we moved our families to Egypt. We knew we needed to be here. It didn't matter that there would be sacrifice. Being in Egypt was an important part of the process. So while it was rather difficult and challenging to do, we committed to it. As we moved here, we met our colleagues and our partners through Hamza Associates in Cairo, and we worked with about, I'd say, 24 or 25 Egyptian architects in that office. So we were combining their resources and our resources together. You can see some of us sitting in this photo on the main staircase in the office. The work grew more and more intense over time, and at a certain point, this was the table that was required to review the technical information because this was very early in computer use, so a lot of this had to be corrected and checked by hand. There were something like 18,000 individual drawings for the packages and several thousand sheets of A0 sheets that had to be filtered through and coordinated. It was and if you look closely under the table there is stacks of drawings that all had to be gone through and recorded. As we were doing this, and we were very happy and excited to live in Cairo and live in Egypt and come back and forth to Alexandria, we had an interesting sort of setup, but it was a lot of sunshine coming in. We weren't used to that much sun being in Norway before that, so we had to build, you can see little paper shades to block the sun from the computer screens. But we did produce a set of drawings that was rather magnificent, and as we moved through the process, coordinating with the Egyptian engineers, coordinating with our international engineers and construction teams, this happened, which was apparently the 100-year flood in Cairo, which was back in, I guess, 1995. The roof leaked considerably. Our papers were drenched. There was several centimeters of water on the floor, and we lost everything. The entire project was taken by this massive flood that no one in Cairo had even seen in their lifetimes. It was rather challenging for us as we showed up that day, wandering through the mud and water in Giza to get to the office from our homes. And then we started this crazy process of blow drying the drawings, drying them with hand dryers, with hair dryers. We were blow drying the computers to make sure that they could somehow be used again. And we finally succeeded. We rebuilt the set in less than 2 months, I believe, fully, and we continued on our way. During that time, we made a number of trips to Alexandria with the team at different times. You can see some of us here. That's Jordan and Elaine on the far right of this picture, always enjoying the Corniche for a walk before we came to work on the site. We continued to work in the Cairo office, and some of us took trips around Egypt to many different places, including as far south as Aswan, to enjoy and be a part of society here. And that led to the eventual need to build the building. And as scary as everything was before this, building the building was equally challenging.
And after everything had been designed and finished and the bids and the specifications had been made, it was time to construct the building. Together with Hamza, we created a consortium. And the bids were, and the specifications were quite special here, because for every trade, we put together a 50% Egyptian company with a 50% non-Egyptian company. And that meant that there was a knowledge trade happening throughout the whole process. Never 49-51, never 60-40, always 50-50. And that meant that the influence from the Egyptian portion all the way throughout the project became a real knowledge and production transition for many Egyptian companies at the time. In addition, in the bids, we introduced hard hats. So you actually had to put on a hard hat, hard shoes to protect security, toilets, a lot of specifications that had not normally been included in the contracts with the contractors from the architect's side. Very often these had, before the library in Alexandria, been left to be dealt with by the construction companies themselves. And we found out later that many of the descriptions we had in our specifications then started becoming standard in many of the other specifications in Egypt. We're extremely proud of the fact that we set out building this building by saying we would not have one casualty on the building site in Alexandria, and we did not have one casualty. Whatever architecture is doing, whatever architecture can be, it is not worthwhile casualties. And that can be prevented by being very specific. So when the site opened, we started looking at how to dig into the ground, into the sand, how to avoid the major elements that might be difficult. As you know, we are 14 meters into the Mediterranean Sea. But that maybe wasn't, the most interesting part. The most interesting part were the mosaics found on site. Can you imagine the layers of history on a site like this? Everywhere you go, there is a portion of history and different histories in time. And this mosaic of this beautiful dog is, of course, now in the museum of the library, but important for us to understand the legacy of a site that we're actually building something new on. If that wasn't done with high amount of sensitivity, it wouldn't happen. But of course, there are hardcore elements when you construct buildings. There are rebars and concrete. There is digging, and there is the Hamza huge slurry wall. And the slurry wall is important because it's protecting the building against the water. And one of the inventions by Mamdouh Hamza at the time was to say, let's turn it into a full cylinder, because the more pressure you have on the cylinder when water is pressuring against the body, the more watertight the cylinder gets because of the forces. And the scales of things that were happening, welding the rebars for the columns on the inside of the column wasn't a normal way of moving. The column heads, as we will hear a little later, were lifted into place, and they had been precast on site. The scaffolding was so complex at certain points in time that the chaos was almost fulfilled because you could hardly move on the site. At the most, more than 3,500 workers on the site at the same time. And that's approximately the number of visitors, I guess. But as we moved forward, the building slowly materialized with all the complexities that we have in there. And I think it's fair to say nobody had done this before, not even with the contractors that we had in Egypt and from around the world. Nobody had imported types of materials to Egypt. This was just the time of the IMS 400 items program, where Egypt had to open up certain new materials to be imported and to put the custom rates in place. So all of these things came together on a building site that took some time, but it was necessary time. Necessary time for a very young team growing up from a very naive version of the world to a very hardcore, realistic version of the world throughout one project. So I think for those who visit the building today, it's hard to understand how this building was actually created to some extent, because it looks so simple in the end, and it has so many features and so many layers that it would take us weeks to explain everything. So what we're highlighting now are some few of them.
Many of the construction workers had to deal with unusual circumstances. Those that worked on the roof had to work on a tilted surface. Those that worked on the wall, that it was tilting the other way. There were terraces, there were strange points to climb on, but probably one of the most unusual construction efforts was on the little planetarium just outside in the plaza, because the construction workers had to be mountain climbers. They had to latch themselves in with rope, and they had to climb on the bottom, on the top, on the sides of this very unusual structure to build it. It's probably one of the more unusual things we have ever created in terms of construction. It's supported without columns. It has 2 trusses that hold it at the meridian line of this great sphere that was inspired by Ptolemy. And it was always amazing to see how they were managing and inventing new ways to build on this site. So there were many iconic elements, and now we're going to open up the floor to our colleagues here who have quite a lot to say, and they have been heavily involved in the development of the project. And we're going to start with Robert Greenwood, who's to my left here. He started shortly after the competition, but he started when the design really became intense and became very, very complex. And we were all impressed by your dedication, both to the large-scale ideas, the concepts, and to the smallest details. And I think that shows today. So perhaps you can tell us a little bit about some of your thoughts and some of the challenges and delights that you had when you were working on the roof. Rob Greenwood.
Okay, well, thank you, Craig. You know, taking part in this endeavor to build the Great Library was such a fairy tale for every architect in Norway. So wanting to be a part of that fairy tale, I think, was what drove us all forward. And then, as you said, moving to, of all places, Egypt, to actually construct this really just fell into the whole pattern of the project. The roof, you know, usually the roof is not the most important part of any particular building. It's where you put the air conditioning, the lift overruns, the drains and the pipes, and it's left to an engineer to sort that out. In this case, the roof obviously is very, very different. The roof is really encapsulates the whole concept of the library itself. This tilted plane, we talked about it earlier, that connects the future to the past through the ground line that is the present. The roof really expresses this concept completely. We couldn't have any elevator overruns. We couldn't have any machines and drains on that roof. So I think it's really quite a daunting task. I remember back at the time thinking, maybe this is not possible. I'm reflected a lot on that since. I think Egypt is the place where the possible is actually possible. The impossible is possible. It's where you can build quite unbelievable things like the Alexandria Library. I'm not sure if it could be done other places. So the big things can really be done here. Sometimes the smaller things are more complicated, and this roof obviously is full of very many small things that really have to work. It was, as we talked about earlier, Kjetil, it was an endeavor between a joint partnership between an Egyptian company and a European company from Austria. So this was really a collaboration across the nations, and I think that that is very, very important, this knowledge transfer we talked about. I'm really happy to come back and see this roof every time. First of all, that it's not leaking. That's always a relief. It had to be not just waterproof, it had to be sand-proof, crow-proof, and rat-proof, and all sorts of other things. The original design for the roof really showed, I think, you can leave that one on for now, Craig, maybe. The original design showed, I think, a flat sheet of glass. It was to be really one sheet of glass with these canopies on the inside. I think the decision to try and make this more sculptural by displaying the roof light and the dip in the roof is really very important. It's very beautiful to come here, particularly towards the end of the afternoon when the sun is getting a little bit low and the shadows are getting a little bit longer, and to see how this roof really comes to light in the sunlight and the shadow. And that's because of this three-dimensionality in the roof. If we go to the underside, you know, every outside has an inside, and the inside of this roof I think is one of the most beautiful aspects of the library. I'm particularly concerned about it now. You'll see, obviously, all of the skylights now. Daylight and books is not usually something that goes well together. The ultraviolet light tends to destroy the books, particularly the rare books. So we had to face all of those roof lights, the triangular roof lights, directly to the north. We give them extra shading with these little eyelashes that you might have seen on the outside, just to make sure that we get a minimum of direct sunlight through the roof. But by opening the roof in this way, we maximize the views out, and the views out are to the horizon. How important is it when you're in the library to look up from your book and focus in the distance, be long-sighted and not short-sighted? The green and blue glass, I think we should say a little bit about that, was really just
You can see it here.
The idea to bring a bit of life and a bit of color into the building. You'll see that they're on the one face of the roof light that faces directly to the west, getting an awful lot of sunlight. So we put in just small roof lights here. This glass is the same glass that we use in the cathedrals. It's about this thick. And that's why you get that beautiful shimmering light as it comes through the roof, hits the columns, hits the floor, hits the wall behind. The blue and the green, well, in another country, in another place, we would not have chosen the blue and the green. I think we would have chosen other colors. In Norway, we like the warm colors because it's so cold. I think in Egypt and Alexandria, the cool light, the blues and the greens, are more appreciative. But really, the roof is this canopy over the great space, and that's what really makes this library special. You know, when you enter this library, you don't go into the library, you go out into the library. You come out into this forest of columns, the leaf canopy, and the light that filters gradually down through the space. It's, for me, still one of the most wonderful feelings to enter the library. With that, I think we'll move further into the interior. Elaine.
Well, thank you, Rob. I'd like to introduce now Elaine Molinar. She's an architect, and she worked on the competition design in Los Angeles, but unfortunately was not able to make it to the award ceremony. So this is her chance to be on stage after winning the competition. She worked with the project through the design competition and until it was complete. And she was very important in developing the planning of the building, especially in relation to the staff services and all of those things behind the scenes that the visitors rarely get to see. The comfort of all of those people that work in the building. You can thank Elaine for that. And she also created all the links between the library spaces that led to much of the planning of the building that people use ordinarily throughout the day. You were very important in these layouts and how they relate to each other, Elaine. And I think it's because you have a sensitivity for people and how they relate to each other. These are not abstract lines on a page. These are places every time we drew them. And I think you felt that all the way through. You understood the families that would work here, the people that would arrive here. And I feel when I look at the smiles of everyone that does work here, it was successful. So Elaine, can you tell us a little bit about the function of the library and how you felt about it as you were working with it and any of the interesting interactions between the different plans and how they were developed?
Thank you. Thank you, Craig. This competition brief was quite extensive. You can see all of the functional requirements that we had to design to, not only for the library itself, the reading room, but also places for museums and exhibitions and an international school of information science, parking, all the things that every building needs to have. I think this was quite a lot to grapple with so early in our careers. This is one of the first buildings I ever worked on. So it was quite a fun, complicated puzzle to solve. In addition to that, we also turned inward to focus on the smallest, most critical aspect, the nucleus of the library, the book itself, and what the book required. The bookshelves, the shelves that house the book, are of a standard size and have required spacing to lay out, to give enough room to browse through the shelves and enough space for the library staff to service the library and the books. This, in turn, generated a structural module, a structural grid, a rhythm of columns based on those library requirements for the shelves, which we arrayed across the entire plan of the building, through every floor, and it created a very versatile tool to lay out the rest of the library functions, and it is also very adaptable. Yesterday, we saw many of the ways in which the library has adapted. It has embraced technology and created new exhibition spaces, which were very easily possible because of this very simple system. When we designed the building during the competition, we conceived of the great reading room as a series of terraces. We put the closed access bookshelves under each terrace with the study rooms and open shelves and reading areas out in front. And what that meant was that wherever you sat in the library, no matter what department or section, you could experience the vastness of the reading room. These are some of the diagrams you can see in the center that we drew. The terrace is in the middle. Next slide. And here is the reading room itself. You can see that rhythm of the columns creates that feeling almost of a hypostyle hall, the kind that we saw in many of the ancient Egyptian temples. The back wall of the reading room is what we call the spine and what we use to organize many of the functions that need to service the room. It has all of the stairs and elevators and technical rooms, and also establishes the link between the library administration and the reading room itself. And it has grand openings so you can look into the library room below. After you first enter the building, you come into what is called the Callimachus Hall. And this is where you catch your first glimpse of the great reading room. You can see in the next slide, where you are flooded with natural light from above, from the roof that we just learned about. And you can see all of the terraces cascading down from the top to below ground. And you are surrounded with light, the warmth of the wood and the books as well. And also the color that comes through the skylights, the blues and the greens, which travel across the floor, across the day, across the year, marking the passage of time. We also designed the furniture in the library room, the chairs and the reading desks. They were produced in Norway, and they were a gift to the library of the Norwegian state. And here you can see the original arrangements of that furniture and in use today.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you. So, Jorunn, being the artist among us, where architects have a tendency of believing they're artists, but I can tell you they're not. They're architects. Artists are artists. And in the way of moving forward in a massive, important public building like this, the integration of art is probably one of the most important ventures that you can go for. In modern architectural history, this has had a tendency of losing. And the combination of art and architecture, especially for this huge public building, was extraordinarily important for the recognition of it. And Jorunn, I want to know a little bit, how did you deal with this enormous task of trying to push art as part of the architecture into this building?
I was completely scared of the dimension and the big scale. But I came from Mexico. I had a scholarship there, and I was very influenced by the indigenous signs and symbols. So kind of, I had it in me in a way. And early we decided that we wanted this wall to say something about the content of the building. So it was quite obvious with some kind of script But what should it say? It had to be something very, something universal, right? It could not be, so early we decided that it had to be like a collage of what humans had been writing down since the beginning. And also, we were also very inspired by thinking of the geological layers in nature and transfer that into geological layers of culture.
So this drawing is already from the competition, and it was put on the facades in the drawing. And this was the first collage you made.
Yeah.
Using scissors and glue.
Yeah, it was very small. I came from actually textile, art in textile, and I was used to think in report system. So I made a little sketch. I was sitting in UCLA library, collecting all these signs and symbols, and we made this into this great wall.
And then you were looking at the layers?
Yeah, that was very interesting when I was thinking of the layers, because how should the layers be laid? Should it follow the ground? Should it follow the roof? If we followed the ground, it would look like it was stuck to the ground. If it followed the roof, it would look like it would fly into the sky. So it was then we followed the cylinder form, and then it followed on place. So these layers is kind of the layers of the geological layers, or the layers of culture, symbolizing that.
And then in the main production, yes, sorry. Go ahead, give it a clap.
Yeah,
and then the process started.
Yeah, and then the process of trying to make a design that could work with engravings. And early in the process, we decided that the stone should come from Egypt. That was very important for us. And we started to search all the way to almost the border of Sudan. And we find this actually a quarry that was not working anymore. It was an ancient quarry, and we opened it up to make, and it's called, yeah, it's almost on the border to Sudan. It's called Schulman Gray, and it had the right quality that we wanted, the color and the quality, granite stone. It was beautiful. This looks like it could have been like, I don't know, 2,000 years ago. And actually, we wanted this wall to be very natural in the facade, like a structure. So we had to bring experts from Norway to relearn, reteach the stonemasons to do hand splitting of the stone. That was really interesting. And then the surface became like the texture, like the skin. Very soft and beautiful. And that then helped us in the design also, because we didn't need the very, very small signs anymore, because the stone gave it. We did some tests in Norway just to see how deep should the engravings be, how rough should the surface be, and the angles of the engravings. If it's a wide angle, the shadows become different if it's like a straight angle. And that was like, you had like different grades of gray throughout the composition of the wall. And we were so lucky, we had so good stone mason young boys, around 20 young boys coming from Upper Egypt, and they could really
carving.
They could not carve. They could work with stone, but they had forgotten how to carve. So we actually also had to train them to do it in a old-fashioned but a little bit new way. We brought like angle grinder and bush hammering to the workshop. And here you see Christian Blystad. One of the most famous sculptor in Norway. We brought him into the project to help us to translate the drawings to stone. So here we are, explaining and working. We went, this is Hassan, the boss of the boys, doing fantastic work. Afternoon picture when we all went home to have
the next one.
Three of the nice boys. And then just showing you how we mounted the stones, one stone after each other. You can maybe show the next. Like
what is the weight of one stone?
Hang-on brackets.
What is the weight of one stone?
The weight is around from 800 to 1,000 kilos. And it was very important to, I think I forgot a little bit to say that. We went to Upper Egypt to like search a little bit for the size of the old engravings and to try to find the right size of each stone. And it was important to, it should be like a human, the size of a human, so 1 by 2 meters, most of the stones, and some stones that are also 1 by 1 meter, and it was like 20 centimeters thick. Yeah, here we are.
And Kari Stensrud, our landscape architect on the team. You know, Kari is the one in the team who's been coming back to Egypt the most of all of us. I think she's here every 4 months.
Oh,
almost.
Everyone in the street seems to say hello to you.
Everyone knows her when she's coming. And I think part of the choice for her to engage so strongly into the landscaping elements, as we will hear, was also because she connected to the people. And you have to understand that landscaping and architecture, they are not working against each other. They're part of the same. And it's extremely, extremely important in contemporary architecture not to wait until the end to design the landscapes for buildings. They should be planned together with the buildings from the very first day. So, Kari, how did you approach this process? It was not so easy.
I have to say that you guys, everybody here, had done a really good job in the competition phase, because the layout of the site itself was, I mean, everything was sort of planned. It was the division between the wet part and the dry part. You had also, from the competitions side, decided that because of you had the reflecting pool, that was a very important start, and you had the big plaza. And of course, many things wasn't decided, so I could start. But the plaza itself, which I'm so happy, because you've talked about all these future, past, but the horizontal parts, that's today. So I was responsible for today, and it feels like that when you get out here on the plaza. That's where life happens today as well. And it's an important link between the Port Said Street and the Corniche between, of course, the conference center and the library. We really wanted to have an open plaza. We wanted it to be inviting and versatile. And it is still inviting, it's still versatile. And another thing we wanted to do we knew that the stone, we want to use the same stone in that actually was used for the wall. So you guys had also done a big job there to find the local stone, Schulman Gray from Aswan. But what was not so common in Egypt at the time was to use the solid stones, not thick slabs. What was used was always tiles, stone tiles, veneer, polished tiles. But we wanted to make a more solid feeling. We wanted the surfaces to be bush-hammered, which gives a very soft feeling to it. And we did a little bit of fighting because it's a little bit hard to change a way of working with stone even. But we managed. And then the softscape was, of course, a challenge. We were sitting in Norway in the beginning. We decided, okay, let's have olive trees on the plaza. Let's have date palms along the corniche. And of course, we need to have the papyrus in the pool. As you all, I mean, everybody knows about the Upper and Lower Egypt and the representation of lotus and papyrus. And with the library, that was, of course, absolutely meaningful. The problem was that we had no idea where to get these plans, and it was we were afraid of the public opinion and about what would the client say. Do they want to use agricultural plants? Isn't that aren't these simple plants? So, but for us, they were culturally significant plants, really, really important in the history of Egypt and the use of people. So here we ended up having the papyrus in the pool. So hopefully one day it will be back, the proper papyrus. We have the date palms along the corniche, and they are so important in so many places for, I mean, everything from the dates themselves, but fodder for the animals and building material, everything. So for us, it meant something to give them status again. And the olive trees. They are, of course, they are olives, but they also represent the Mediterranean and they represent time. So finally, when we moved down here, we had all the good helpers. We had represented here Piero Donato from Fiorissima company. He took us around to all kinds of nurseries, and we could pick and choose plants and study, and his guys were just amazing. And we had and they explained everything about this, how to use a date palm, how to why is this plant so important. And we had Dr. Abu Dahab from University of Cairo. We went to Dr. Agab, of course, to try to get papyrus from him. In the end, I'm not sure where the papyrus came from. And we went into the delta areas to families who had big, huge olive trees. But in the end, they didn't want to sell them. And I do understand why. They're worth much more where they are because they were old and fantastic. So I just want to show the last two pictures here. This one is taken almost 25 years ago. Two of the workers sitting underneath the olive tree, having a snack, whatever. And then I was here in March, And so the next one, it's almost 25 years later. I'm not sure if it's the same ones, same guys, but I hope, we all hope that in another 20, 25 years, some other guys will be sitting, resting underneath the olive trees.
So it has been an immense ride. This marks the end of our little conversation on the Alexandria Library. But, you know, there were so many people involved, and when we start listing up the name lists for the books and publications that we're doing, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And we have to recognize everyone who's been involved throughout all these type of things in the different design phases, during the construction supervision phase, and you know, maybe especially in this case, Ihab El-Habag, who was sitting with us, together with us in LA, already from the competition phase. You know, these type of things, I truly believe they only come once in a lifetime.
Ihab, my old friend from Los Angeles, actually.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. I'm really very proud and happy to be among this beautiful group, Snoheta. And it was 34 years ago that we came here all together and get this competition. I just want to say I'm very happy and very proud to be the Egyptian, Alexandrian architect who was among the team, and to do something nice in Egypt. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, we were thinking of having a fast kind of Pecha Kucha, summarizing, pushing through quite some few projects to show what actually did this amazing Library of Alexandria trigger for us worldwide. And let there be no mistake, with the Library of Alexandria, we could have been a one-hit company. It was extremely important to prove that we can continue on the same line, that we can actually develop into something broader, bigger, more collaborative even into the future. But without the library, this would never, ever have been possible. And one of the reasons why I said at the beginning here today that one of the most important feelings we had when we came back was actually the feeling of gratitude. Since the library, we have established a whole series of practices around the world, studios spanning from San Francisco, New York, Paris, Oslo, we had Innsbruck, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, Adelaide, Melbourne. You know, I mean, what more can you ask for? We're getting a deep dive into so many different cultures, and we are increasing our knowledge day by day, working with people around the world. Not only with the different cultures that we're getting involved into, but also with the different professions that we have in these studios. Architecture, landscape architecture, interior architecture, graphic, digital design, product design, still art. So it's 9 studios, 350 employees, 40 nationalities. We have approximately 40 projects under construction for the moment worldwide. We have about 300 on the table. But it was triggered here in this city by the Mediterranean. And the next project that actually happened in 2000, we won the competition then, was the National Opera and Ballet in Norway. And it was a continuation of many of the design ideas that we did have here in Alexandria. The tilted roof, but we took it one step further. This time, we made the roof accessible to the public. So it could actually be a performance space outside, in addition to the inside performance.
You know, both the Library of Alexandria and the National Opera in Oslo were anonymous international competitions. When we'd won Alexandria, we thought, well, we were struck by lightning. How can you get struck by lightning twice? But sure enough, it happened. So then we were thinking, what will happen next? And we were invited to participate in a competition to rebuild the World Trade Center site in New York City. And we won the third major international competition for the museum at the World Trade Center site. It has within it some of the great significant stories of all of those people that were challenged by that day, and these are two of the original structural columns from the World Trade Center building that were recovered after the buildings collapsed.
And that drove us further into the deep parts of history. 10,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, the cave paintings of Lascaux, where mankind started in the middle of France, were supposed to build a visitor center and a copy of New Caves. We won the competition. Jean Nouvel was not very pleased, but we did win the competition, and we recreated also the caves for now visitors to visit.
In a way, because the library originally here in Alexandria was a museon, a kind of museum, it also connected us to a number of new museum projects, and we won another international competition for the new San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. It was at the time the largest museum of modern art in the Americas, and it collected a wide range of people and opened the door to this type of art for a number of different types of people, including those under the age of 17 who were admitted free. The galleries are among some of the best we've made. The artists always say that they enjoy showing their works inside of this museum, so we're very proud of that further project.
And the next big international competition that we won was the ITRA, the King Abdulaziz Center for World Culture in Dammam in Saudi Arabia. It is a project that is supported by itself, referring back to some novels of Italo Calvino and talking about specific types of relationships between objects. It is a huge project, actually, I have to say, and this is a picture from the library inside ITRA in Saudi Arabia. Is also one of these projects where we got challenged to the bitter end. Another small direct commission was a restaurant on the Norwegian southwest coast. The restaurant is called Under. It's a restaurant and a marine biological research center at the same time. It is a room that starts above water and ends below water. And you can sit inside and look through this big window and watching fish swim by, and you can also point at the fish maybe that you would like to have for dinner. And talking about sustainability, of course, part of that is to give that building back to nature. So slowly, slowly, it's overgrown by the seaweed.
Oh, no, we can't, unfortunately. It will mess everything up. Sorry.
What was that?
He wants to run the video, but if we do, it'll... No, we...
Oh, no. And, of course, one of the things that we've been preoccupied with the last 20 years is environmental sustainable buildings. We've done a series of what we call powerhouses, and these powerhouses are energy positive. They're producing more energy than they consume, which means you're paying back the CO2 footprint over a certain period of time, including material production, transportation, maintenance, consumption, and recycling of the building after a period of time. So the total accounting of the CO2 at a certain point brings that building at least to a CO2 neutral position. And of course, technologies are moving really fast. And it's one of the big challenges for us in the world for the moment is to follow this up. Also, we are here now in conversation to deal with this. One of the bigger projects that we're dealing with for the moment in Tokyo is a high-rise in the middle of Tokyo. Just to show you, for us, we deal with all scales. We deal with every scale that comes around and try to involve clients and others in order for us to be able to capture certain specific contextual situations in the city where we operate.
Another unusual project that we were awarded was the development of the headquarters for Le Monde Enterprises, which is a media organization based in Paris. The project spans over a bridge, it's a bridge structure that spans over a train tunnel just below, and it's lit up and publicly accessible at all times. And it's a miracle, really, in this day and age of challenges of terrorism and freedom, that this project remains open to this day, so the public can walk below the offices of the media center itself and enjoy the city and the building as though it were available to them at all times. And public space is very important to us, and we won an amazingly odd commission to rebuild Times Square in New York City. So we took the 5 blocks of New York City, which had been a terrible place to be. Many people were dying in vehicle accidents, or there was a great deal of crime, and we paved over the streets and made them into public plazas. So people can enjoy Times Square now without the fear of running into a car or having their purses stolen. It's transformed the city and transformed Times Square in a way that we didn't imagine possible. There are some 500,000 people a month that move through Times Square at any given time. We've made a lot of libraries, of course. The Alexandria Library is a great starting point, and we've been moving through a number of library projects throughout the years. This is a central library in Calgary, in Canada, that bridges over a train track, and inside the library is this beautiful wooden atrium that spirals up to a skylight, so you're always aware of the feeling of the sky, and that was inspired by our work here in Alexandria.
And we're not afraid of moving into any kind of very hard conditional situations around the world. This is the Sami National Theatre. You might know the First Nation people in Norway called the Sami. They have a new national theatre which is now under construction. The funny thing maybe is that these people are living from reindeer, mainly, herding reindeer. And in this building, just to show you what kind of combinations are coming in architecture in the future, in this building, there is also an education for how to herd reindeer for the next generation of Sami people, as well as a theater. And I think the library in Alexandria is a good example of how different functions can be incorporated into a larger cultural understanding. Under construction, also right now, is the big opera house in Shanghai. It is one of these projects where we're testing out a lot of new issues when it comes to the amount of performance areas, lobby areas. But as you can see, we're testing also a way of walking on the roof with these type of things. And we believe that the intersection between a human being and an object is defining the relationship between us as human beings and the object itself, as we have done with the smaller objects here by the mountain Snohetta, a small reindeer observation cabin where you can sit inside and safely look at the reindeer passing by, or the hiking elements that we're dealing with in some of the Norwegian mountains where people stay overnight and sleep in the same large sleeping rooms, very, very open-minded. You know, these hiker homes cannot shut their doors. They have to let everyone in. Even if it's completely full, you have to let people in, otherwise you would die outside under these circumstances. 2 small maritime centers here in Denmark and Esbjerg, very sustainable wooden buildings, all the way down to designing the new Norwegian money. We were extremely happy to see the
10-pound note,
10-pound
here
note
in Egypt.
in Egypt with the picture of the library on it. So now we could easily say we're on 2 types of money notes, one we designed ourselves and one with the Library of Alexandria. And this moves us all the way down to the tiny little projects, beehives. Designing for bees is so much fun and so important. But even the smallest projects sometimes leave you with an image of what architecture in the future could be. Contextualized, very simple, straightforward, and with a notion of sensitivity towards the human being. That's why we love libraries. This is the next library. in Beijing. It is a huge hall at the same time. It's seeping its life through. It has a landscape in the interior, and we're hoping for sure that we will achieve similar things that we have achieved with the experience of the library in Alexandria, also in Beijing.
This is the last project we're going to show you. It's also a library, and it will open next month in New York City. So after 30 years, after being here in Alexandria and seeing this project, the lineage has become full circle. So this is a project which uses script on the wall in the same way that the Alexandria Library does, and you can see it here. It's created by an artist, and it has the same patina of the exterior of the library here, and it invites the power of knowledge, of writing and literature into your experience on the street before you even enter the library. And the last picture we'll show of that particular library is the skylight, which was also inspired by the skylights here in Alexandria. So there's a lineage that we've been working with and developing all this time. And I'd like to stop here by saying that this power that the Alexandria Library has left with us over all these years and given us the motivation to complete these projects, it's also important that we understand that and be acutely aware of the challenges that our neighbors to the east and northeast are facing, among others, the strife and distress that people have all around us as we have the privilege of enjoying this library. And that makes us even more thankful for the strength and knowledge that this library in Alexandria gives all of us. The library stands in vigil for the future of knowledge and hope. And perhaps more importantly, this library is about love, the love of knowledge and the love of each other. It's about writing and the power of writing and the power of people. It's about the collections themselves. And finally, it's about the power of the love in this library to build bridges between cultures and between people, as the ancient library once did. And we'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexandria.
I think you have given us more than a dream. You have given us a reality. And as Dr. Zaid said, we really hope that we can live this reality for so many years, thousands of years more of the Library of Alexandria. So thank you for that. We're very grateful to what you have done. Thank you very much.